Music theory, string presentation orientation, where we have the top string on top, that being the low or heavy E string, the one closest to the ceiling within our video presentations, making it look like we're playing left-handed when we're not. Why would we do that? Because the chicks dig lefties. No, that's not why we do it. I'll tell you why we do it. The objective here, to optimize visual learning by aligning fretboard video presentations with the physical and spatial reality of the instrument. What does that mean? It sounds quite wordy. Well, simply, if we are this person trying to learn to play the guitar, we want to be spending all of our cognitive mental energy trying to learn the specific thing we're trying to learn, whether that be how a song works, a scale works, how chords work, and not spending our mental energy flipping the guitar around in our mind. The easiest way to do that is not to be looking at the guitar as though someone is sitting in front of us playing the guitar, because the directionality of the fretboard will be opposite to what we are doing. You might think intuitively that makes sense, because that's what you would probably be doing if you're trying to observe someone. That's the easiest place to sit in order to observe what they are doing. And you might say, hey, look, they're playing the guitar with their left hand on the fretboard, their right hand picking, and so on and so forth. So it should be me doing the same thing with the same hands. However, it's actually a lot easier for us to mirror what is happening as though we are playing the guitar into a mirror. That will align where the fretboard has the low string on top. And when I look at a shape, I can easily line it up to what I'm doing in the same directional pattern. And I can also line up my worksheets, which will make an argument for having the top string on top with them as well, having everything going in the same direction. If you do this, then you're spending way less cognitive energy trying to rotate the guitar, rotate the worksheet around in our mind, allowing ourselves to spend all of our time, all of our energy on a specific task, which is one of the things you really want to be able to do when you're learning something like the guitar. Sometimes you want to learn to train your fingers. If I'm training my fingers, I want to pick a specific training tool to train the muscle memories of my fingers. If I'm trying to learn a scale position, then I might be working on the guitar, or I might be working with an Excel sheet or something like that. I want to have everything lined up so I could spend all of my energy on that one thing and not be trying to split my mental capacity around multiple different things so that I can achieve particular goals. So oftentimes something like the guitar, you can think of it as a series of smaller goals. You break down into smaller chunks, and then you go after that one thing with veracity until you basically just have it, right? So why it's objectively better. Now, again, nobody else is really doing this, so we have to make the argument as to how could that be better. I think it's just objectively better. It's objectively easier. If you were to run a test and watch the same presentation where the orientation of the guitar is flipped this way, as though you were looking at someone playing it, or if it was turned around this way, I believe that you will find that it'll be a lot easier to actually work along with the presentation with the second one. Now, you might think that it's not as cool looking, the video's not as cool, or the player doesn't look as neat. They look funny, they look like they're left-handed maybe, or something like that. But when you're actually trying to pick up the skills, I think you'll find it easier this way, and I think it's just clear. That's just obvious that that's the case, but nobody does it, so we have to ask the question or make the argument as to why it's a good thing to do. So it matches real-world orientation. When holding a guitar in standard playing position, the low E string is physically on top, closest to your face. So obviously when we're playing the guitar, I know we have a dog down here, but he's in the playing position, you can see. And you can see that the low E string is closest up top. This is the low or heavy E string as the dog here is playing the guitar. Now, notice that when you see something on a piano, you don't have this problem. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But notice on a piano, you don't like sit in front of the piano because you won't be able to see the person because the piano is like an elephant in front of them. You have to actually look over their shoulder. which means that you don't have this problem when learning on the piano because you're sitting kind of side by side. If you're learning together, oftentimes it's useful to sit side by side as well. But when you put a video camera on the guitar, it's just natural to put it as though you're sitting in front of it, which actually makes it a little bit difficult for the learner that way. So flipping the video image so the E is also on top removes the mental gymnastics of inverting images. So notice that if you're looking at someone playing, the guitar's going to be facing this way. If I'm looking at the dog playing, the guitar's playing this way. But when I'm looking at them, my guitar is facing the other way because we're obviously face to face. So we can flip it this way just using software, which is the mirror image, as though you flipped it around in a mirror. So notice that this is the normal orientation of the guitar. If you're looking at it face on, you can imagine swiveling it around in a circle here. That's different. If you swiveled it around in a circle, you would end up with the high E string on top. That's not what we want. We want to mirror image it so that we have the low or heavy E string on top, because that basically mirrors what we're seeing from our perspective from behind the guitar. So improves visual logic. So as you look down while playing, the fretboard progresses left to right and low to high from top to bottom. Our visual presentation should match. So in other words, when we're behind the guitar, as I think we could see like this way, when we're behind the guitar, then clearly the top string is up here. We're looking top to bottom and then left to right, kind of like we read a book. But if I have the situation where the guitar's this way, notice it's not left to right. That's not in the United States. We read left to right. Everything is left to right. So if you're naturally orientated left to right, you have to reverse the way you normally visualize the screen. Even watching a movie, we expect things to go like left to right, right? And so this is going from right to left. And so it's backwards. What are we in? We're on the wrong side of the road. This isn't Europe or something. Not that I like Europe and anything. I'm just saying. I'd be hard to switch the side of the road if you're used to seeing it going one way. So scale and mode shapes can be visualized exactly as they feel under the fingers. So even though it's mirroring with the other person's left hand, or it looks like their left hand, it's actually still easier to mirror what is happening, because that just is naturally what we would do when we mimic something, particularly when we're mimicking ourselves as we're looking into a mirror. So this is what I would argue we would want to have for optimal learning. We want the person playing having the guitar as they naturally would, looking to a video presentation where it looks like the person is left-handed. So this is what's going to be on the video presentations, noting right now we're going through more theory stuff. Later we'll go into actually playing the guitar and whatnot. And when we do so, I'm going to basically show it this way, and I'm going to try to angle my fretboard down, at least when we're not working on just kind of holding the fretboard, so that I can line it up on top of the Excel worksheet of the fretboard, which allows us to see a mapping of what we're looking at, the fretboard in Excel also having the low or heavy E string on top, which is another thing we're going to argue for in a future presentation, because again, no one usually does that, which is crazy to me, because I think it's just clearly better to do. So if you have this going this way, what I'm looking at going this way on top of the mirror, the image of the fretboard in Excel, that's going to allow you to pick up skills the fastest, focusing in on whatever you're trying to do. The scales, the song that you're going to play note to note and whatnot. So why it's objectively better: aligns with grid-based tools like Excel. So spreadsheets read left to right, top to bottom. So when we line it up to the spreadsheet, which we'll talk more about later, then it just lines up perfectly on top of a spreadsheet. But again, we want to put the low or heavy string on top within the spreadsheet as well. Displaying strings top down matches the natural reading and programming flow in tablature tools like Excel. So obviously we usually read, top down, left to right. So it would be nice to have it in that directionality. Reduces reversal errors. So traditional video presentations often lead to confusion for beginners. Is the top string the highest pitch or the top in the diagram? So notice that when we talk about directionality in music, particularly with the guitar, it gets confusing because when we're looking at directionality in terms of our actual hands on the guitar, if this is the low or heavy string, then we're going to go up, down, left, right. But when we think about pitch, we typically think, of course, pitch going up as the pitch gets higher. And that means the pitch is going up when you're playing the guitar as you're going down to the floor, to the skinnier strings, then you're going higher in pitch. So what we really need to do on the guitar is really define our terms for directionality so that we can explain exactly what we're doing. When you're saying you're going up or down, are you talking about pitch going up or down? Are you talking about the actual directionality in terms of how we're holding the guitar going up towards the ceiling, down towards the floor? So that there's nothing we can do to kind of eliminate that problem. That might be, by the way, a reason why they put the tablature in reverse order, because if you eliminate the guitar, if you're looking at like the piano or something like that, it would make sense then to naturally say, I'm going to line up my worksheet to display the music. As pitch goes up, I'm going to have it go up in pitch, right? So it naturally makes sense that way, but tablature is designed to be easy for the guitar. So you would think then it would be better to have it line up to the guitar so it's easier to kind of mirror what is happening on the guitar. So in any case, this reversal is one of the biggest barriers to early visualization and pattern recognition. So you might, if you don't really look at it, if you don't test this out, you might say, it's not a big deal. I could just flip it around in my mind. But seriously, look at the two, look at the two. And even if you're experienced, I think you'll find that you're spending a lot more cognitive energy flipping something around. And you will, if you're doing theory stuff to try to understand the patterns on the fretboard, it takes a lot of cognitive energy already to try to figure out the patterns and try to look at the intervals and try to pick around a song. It's going to, especially for beginners, cause you more frustration to the point of possibly not advancing, stopping, just putting the guitar down. And if you don't limit yourself to looking at one thing at a time and have your goal at one thing at a time. Okay, so better for cross instrument logic, piano keys ascend left to right. So when you're on a piano, also notice that a lot of music theory is built on the concept of the piano. Even many people that teach guitar, they can't resist going back to the piano. I'm even doing it sometimes, and I never played the piano, right? So but it's obviously listed out left to right. That's one of the beautiful things about the piano is it's all on one string. We can see it from left to right, and it reads easily. So if we flip the guitar string orientation to match ascending pitch from bottom to top, we force a cognitive mismatch. So again, a lot of people kind of visualize the piano as their starting point for looking at music theory because it gives you like the pattern of the whole house and the C major. I'm not sure that's the best thing to do, and particular for the guitar, because it does lead to kind of things like the C major is the most important notes, even though they're somewhat arbitrarily picked and whatnot. And on the guitar, all the notes are kind of the same because we don't have any differences between the shapes and sizes of the keys and whatnot. But you still have that. Now, just remember, again, on the piano, you don't have the situation like on a guitar. You would imagine someone's going to sit across from you. That's just the natural thing to do, to watch you play the guitar as easy as possible. On a piano, you cannot sit on the opposite side of the piano and watch them play the piano because it's like having an elephant between you and the player of the piano. That being the piano is the elephant. You have to sit on the same side. And that means that you don't have this rotation of the piano keys problem. You do have a problem of not, the person's in the way of seeing the keys, right? It's a presentation problem in general just for presenting because you can't see the piano player and you can't really align them to either their back is to the crowd or the piano's to the crowd, right? But But when you do a video, it actually works out better in some ways because you're actually looking over their shoulder as they see the instrument, which is not the case in the way most people look at the guitar, because we're looking at the guitar like over the top of the guitar. There's no camera angle that really picks that up properly, you know? So how to use the method with other resources. So you might say, hey, look, that's fine, but I don't want to do that because other resources, all the other teachers out there, nobody else does that. And so I want to learn it this way where I'm looking at the guitar because that's the way everyone else does it. Well, I would argue that if you learn it as easily as possible with the orientation in such a way that you can learn it as fast as possible, it doesn't prevent you from rotating the guitar around in your mind. What you want to do is be able to just to work on it more and more. And the more you work on it, the more you will naturally be able to rotate things around in your mind. So I don't think it really stops you from being able to visualize things and rotate them around in their mind. I think one of the things that, well, in any case, the other thing you can do is you can take the video presentations that are out there and get a video of them in an MP4 format, possibly using screencast software to do that if it's legal just for personal use or whatever, no copyright, don't plagiarize anyone or anything like that. But if you can get the video image, then you can put it into software like Camtasia or any other software. There's a lot of free editing software out there, and just flip it. So this, once again, technology gives us the capacity to do things that we just couldn't do before to learn. And so one of those is you can basically get in some way or another the video format of anything that's out there on the interwebs, and then just flip it, take the mirror image, and that might help you to visualize the thing. You might also rotate the guitar down, just focus on their guitar. If their guitar is pointed upwards this way, then you might rotate it down so it's pointed this way so you can line it up directly to what you're doing on your worksheet or something like that, right? You can do those tweaks because you have the software these days. Nobody really does that, but it's so easy to do. The software is basically free for many types of editing, not Camtasia, but a lot of software. So why most guitar teachers haven't adopted mirror image video instruction. So you might be saying, well, if this is obviously true, why is it nobody does it? Nobody does it. I don't see anybody doing it. Well, I'm thinking it's tradition and habit is going to be one reason. Most guitar teachers' teaching methods, especially video lessons, have inherited their format from live in-person instruction. Now note that if you're doing live instruction and you're teaching like one person, that's really ideal. That would be great, because then you could have that person sitting in front of you and you could point to their fretboard, you can move their fingers around and whatnot, but you can also have them sitting beside you on the left or right so that their guitar is facing the same direction and they're looking over their guitar as well as your guitar when you want to look at that way as well. But if you're teaching more than one person, which is often the case for more popular, guitar teachers at a time, then the only way to do it is for them to be presenting in front like this and all the other people to be sitting behind them or in front of them, right? And that's the only way to really do the presentation. So that's what they're used to. And they're probably thinking, this is what I did, right? So another thing, like when you're a teacher, a couple of problems happen. One is you get good at something and you learn the beginner's mind. You forget you forget how it was to learn at that stage. And that makes it more difficult for you to put your mind in the thinker of the learner. But also, you can almost resent some of the changes that happened, right? Because you're like, dude, there's all these resources available now that I didn't have. And sometimes you feel like, well, I had to go through it this way. They should have to go through it this way. I'm not going to make it easy on them, even though obviously it's our job to make it easy and use whatever resources possible to make it as easy as possible. That's how you're going to be a good teacher, But you can see how that happens, right? You're like, this is the way I did it. If it's good enough for me, it's good enough for someone else. But things have advanced, they've changed. You could do it differently. There's pros and cons to the different eras of when people learn. So anyways, in a physical lesson, the teacher sits opposite the student, meaning the student sees a mirror image by default. So they sit opposite, meaning when they sit opposite, they're usually facing the other person. When the same approach is transferred to the video without adoption, the result is a camera-facing view that doesn't align with how the student is holding their own guitar. So obviously, when you put the camera in place, and if that's not what you're used to, what are you going to do? You're going to put it in the seat of a student that's sitting in front of you, that's going to be facing you, and that's what you would expect would be the way you align the camera. So why most guitar teachers haven't adopted it? Well, lack of pedagogical awareness. That's just going to be a way of teaching people. So big word for how to teach learners. So many teachers don't fully consider the visual cognitive load placed on beginners. So a lot of times this gets into the idea of if you're a master at something, if you've mastered the skill, it's difficult to put your mind back in the beginner's mindset to help the beginner to learn. And again, sometimes teachers get that resentment issue, and they're like, well, they should be able to do it this way. This is the way I did it, and this is the way I'm not going to try to make it easy on you or anything. So they assume students can flip what they're seeing. But just from a practical standpoint, obviously that takes a bigger cognitive load to do, which means that if you're working on flipping the guitar around in your mind, you're not working on as much, at least, not as much of your mind is working on whatever you're trying to learn, the song, the intervals, and so on. But early learners benefit from direct one-to-one correspondence between what they see and what they do, especially when it comes to finger placement and chord shapes. So this is what I want to point out just in terms of, like, people might say, well, the new people these days have tremendous advantages in some ways with video presentations and tools to flip the guitar around and so on. But a lot of people that learned in the past were learning, if they have the benefit of learning, especially one-on-one with somebody, then you get that interaction that people can actually move your fingers around and you can talk directly. So with a video presentation, you can speed up and slow down the video presentation, but you can't get that really one-on-one direct communication clearly, again, there's pros and cons to different formats of learning. Obviously, what we would like to do is optimize all of them if we can get access to them so that we can get the benefits, making each of them as optimal given the type of learning platform that is being used. So this key insight often goes unnoticed unless a teacher has a student how visual learners acquire physical skills. So a lot of times, actually, like it used to be that grade school teachers were quite good. Like they had a lot of training on how people learned, but it turns out that smaller or younger people learn differently than older people, or they have different motivations at least. Some of it, overlaps. But a lot of times, guitar players might not have any of that teacher training. They just know what worked for them. So if you're looking at someone that's not really teacher oriented, they're basically a good guitar player that says, hey, I might as well teach. They might not have learned like just teaching skills, and they basically are saying, this is the way I see it, and I'm telling you the way I see it. And obviously other people don't all see it that way, and we learn differently. Some people are visual learners versus audio learners versus tactile learners. Many masters of guitars are most likely more tactile orientated. They like to touch the guitar, they noodle around with the thing. So another reason, technical inertia. While mirroring a video is simple with today's tools, many teachers aren't comfortable with editing software or video production techniques. So when you go from an on-ground situation to an online situation, oftentimes the camera really makes things more difficult. When I went from on-ground to online teaching, it was in the field of accounting originally, where you don't need a camera, right? It's just screencasting. That makes it a little bit easier. When you have to put the camera in there, you got to deal with another range of issues. And obviously, you're going to start off with the camera just right in front of you, you would think, and have a basic camera angle. So they may record lessons quickly with the minimal post-production, unaware that mirroring could be done in seconds. So they're probably thinking, I'm going to try to, and they're probably focusing on making it look nice, right? not so much maybe to optimize a new technique that could be utilized given the video presentation software, because I haven't really thought about it, because you couldn't do that until you had the video presentation software to edit. Professional ego or image concerns. Some teachers avoid mirroring videos because it flips recognizable logos, tattoos, or the text of a t-shirt. So obviously when we're on platforms and whatnot, and the gears to get attention, so you might clearly be trying to do things in order to build a brand, and to flip the guitar around and make it look like you're left-handed when you're not left-handed could lead people to think, well, he's left-handed, or he thinks he's doing something weird, or the logo on the shirt is not right. It's back. His hat doesn't look cool the way it is, or something. So it might be. So if you got your cool T-shirt and your tattoos, the whatever are backwards, the words are backwards. That's not good. So they prioritize. I don't know. They prioritize their appearance over the learner's ease of comprehension. So I'm just saying, I get that to some degree, of course, because obviously they're trying to advance the algorithm or whatnot so they can get the information out there. And if they don't get the information out there, they're not going to be able to, influence as many people or make it a career or whatnot. So actually the learning sometimes takes a backseat to trying to market the thing, which is something that in my career I've struggled with my entire career. It's like the balancing act. I want to learn things and teach things, but you spend all this time doing like marketing, which I really don't want to do. So, but anyway, assumption of advanced understanding. So teachers who are already fluent players may underestimate how difficult it is for a new student to mentally reverse fretboard layouts. So this gets back to the idea that once you master something, it's difficult to put your mindset back into the beginner's mindset and to kind of like sympathize or empathize with someone that's learning something new in a new environment. It's hard for us. Our memories, I don't even think are accurate, right? Whenever we tell a story about the past, we change it every time we tell it. It's like, I don't trust anything anyone said, like, well, 5 years ago this happened. I don't remember it that way, right? so it's like the person that's playing right now is probably not even can't even really relate to what it was like so much. They've changed the story in their mind so much since when they learned it 20 years ago that it's probably difficult to put themselves into the shoes of the learner. So what feels intuitive to them may be deeply confusing to a beginner, especially when trying to replace fingerings on opposite hand orientation. So platform limitations and norms. So most teaching platforms, so when we go onto like social media platforms, they don't nudge creators towards mirrored presentation. Obviously, once again, the platforms are going to drive a lot of the way things are going to be presented because the reward is views. And whether that generates to revenue, hopefully something like that would be, of course, the drive for most people. Therefore, the drive isn't to optimize teaching. Now, note, you would think if you went to an institution, like that the drive would be instituted towards teaching. It's often not it's not towards teaching there as well in elite institutions, at least like in many areas, it's more towards research if you're in like science. And I would assume that if you're in an area like music, it's about prestige, right? The teachers are there to generate prestige because they're super, talented people or something like that. Oftentimes might be the case. And then on social media platforms, you have the same thing. It's not really about being the best teacher. Oftentimes it's about driving the platform, and the platform is geared towards looking cool, right? So that becomes you would think over time, I'm still hopeful that changes, because I think clearly what the internet does is it allows people to give actual truthful information. So it kind of truthful news, truthful information, truthful health information that can then be critiqued if the algorithms are properly designed to allow, fair representation. I still feel like if you have a fair representation, the best ideas will win. But if you don't have a fair representation, if you have a skewed algorithm, or if you have, a few players that have dominated the platforms, then you end up with skewed information, not the best information. So, but anyways, maybe I'm an idealist on that. I still have hope, though. I hold out hope. Teachers model what they've seen others do, front-facing lessons without questioning whether that's actually optimal. So what are you going to do if you're going to try to become a guitar teacher on the platforms? You're going to look at the biggest players out there, and you're going to try to do what they are doing to try to glean some of the success that they are having. And I think that that totally works to some degree because they're doing what the algorithm is rewarding them to do, clearly, because they're being rewarded for whatever they're doing, whether it was designed for the algorithm or not. So that might work, but I don't think it's a great long-term strategy because you're not really building your own ideas. It's good to some degree, but at the same time, you would think that if you did something different, if it was actually better, which I think there's a lot of potential to do, then you could possibly get into a niche that you're doing something that is clearly better, that's outside, that's not exactly what everybody else is doing, and that's another strategy that maybe could work. That obviously I'm working towards more here. Can't say it's quite worked, but but anytime now it's gonna happen. Anyway, that's that.